going on down there?
Wake up and smell the action.
Devil May Cry.
Rated
Hi,
M for-
I'm Jesse and welcome to Retro Dark. I remember seeing that commercial around the time the original Devil May Cry 1 came out. The over-the-top silliness interjected with a brand new giant sword-wielding protagonist had my imagination going crazy. I remember I got it over the holidays and was absolutely hooked. It really felt like the first game to really transition the zany, over-the-top gameplay of a 2D brawler and brought it into the 3D arena. Along with, some interesting stories, great locales, and real head-banging music, Devil May Cry really had it all. And with the release of the second season of the anime just upon us at this point, I really got the urge to re-engage and play one of my favorite series of all time. And it got me thinking, it would make for a good video to be able to look back at the series and rate the original 5 mainline games and see how they stack up against each other. And without further ado, let's get to it.
Crap like that doesn't interest me. But your swan song will.
Starting with the only lower tier game in the series is Devil May Cry 2. I unfortunately picked this one up on day one, expecting a huge leap forward on the incredible first entry. However, like many, I was sorely disappointed. We got a weak story, lacking combat, boring environments, and overall, a huge miss. The story felt almost phoned in, with Dante, who was in the first game a cheesy one-liner badass demon slayer, became almost a silent protagonist. This missed the mark and completely changed the feel of the game, though the second character Lucia's tale was a little more interesting. That would have been forgivable if the gameplay held up, which it did not. There were no interesting weapons to obtain or weapon-specific abilities. Really, the only exciting thing you obtained in the game was different gems that gave your Devil Trigger transformation various abilities, which did give some neat customization options, such as flight, speed, healing, and various elemental attacks. Enemies and bosses were also a major letdown. Though some did have cool designs, there was no personality or interesting mechanics really. A good number of bosses you could literally stand in the corner and shoot until they were dead, sometimes giving you no viable option or reason to use your sword. Looking at you, Infected Helicopter. Now, it's not all bad. This game did give us a less stiff control scheme with some cool dodging abilities and pistol tricks. This game also features probably my favorite Dante design, but unfortunately that is about it. I believe there's a world that if this was the first Devil May Cry game, it would have been received better. But seeing how good the first one was, this one just didn't cut it. However, the negative reaction around Devil May Cry 2 led to the writing of the ship with Devil May Cry 3. But more on that later. Overall, not an awful game, but really a mediocre one, especially after such a great first entry. Nero, enter stage right, if you please. Yes, that's right, number 4 on this list goes to Devil May Cry 4. After the second game, there really is no, bad Devil May Cry game. So now it gets down to more nitpicks. Devil May Cry 4 brought us into the 7th console generation. New console, fresh new graphics, and a whole new character. This was also the first game to bring us more than one character into a single intertwined story. Nero gave us a whole new set of tools. This included his revving Red Queen sword and Devil Bringer arm, further complemented with some unique combos to make him feel different than Dante. Now for Dante, we need to wait until halfway through the game to play as him, but when we do get a hold of him, he plays a lot like Devil May Cry 3, except he can now change his styles on the fly. He also gains a bevy of new weapons from each boss he defeats, This only further expands his already wide move pool. Now for the story, I enjoy how we kick things off from Nero's perspective, seeing Dante appear in an almost villainous light, at the time. Now as the story proceeds, we begin to peel back the cult's intentions. They worship Dante's father Sparta, but that is not necessarily a good thing. As you may have guessed, they are in fact quite evil and want to rule the world. The graphics were gorgeous for the time, and the dialogue and action continued to embrace the cheese and over-the-top badass nature you expect from a Devil May Cry game. Where this game loses points is the fact you're basically replaying the same stages twice. Once as Nero, and once as Dante. And you do have to fight almost every boss 3 times. From a story perspective, it made sense revisiting the same places, but it felt like really they were just reusing assets, and it just was not as interesting on the way back. Though granted, playing as different characters does make it more palpable. I also felt that Nero had some awkward platforming sections, and generally did not have as deep a move pool as Dante. On a personal note, I always had mixed feelings about this game, as with the inclusion of Nero, it sort of signaled the movement away from Dante as the main character of Devil May Cry, which always made me a little sad. Overall though, this is an absolutely solid game and should not be missed by any fan of Devil May Cry.
You're right. I'm his son, Dante. Sweet dreams.
Devil May Cry 1, the OG, the one that started this great franchise. This was the game that first introduced us to Dante in extraordinary fashion. Within the first minute of meeting him, we see him getting impaled and electrocuted by Trish, only to juggle a motorcycle with his dual pistols and shrug off the wound like some sort of mosquito bite, all while throwing out cheesy one-liners. This super short intro tells us everything we need to know about Dante and gives us a feel for what we're in for the next few hours of gameplay. Gameplay which takes the player on a tour of Malay Island, starting with a gothic castle, to a horrifying garden, a pirate ship, and even the depths of the underworld. The combat at the time was snappy, giving Dante various swords, guns, combos, and devil trigger abilities. The heavy music, along with the weighty combat, really felt like it brought the fun of a 2D brawler to the 3D arena. Enemies were also incredibly varied, as were bosses, who often had their own personalities and would often engage in verbal fisticuffs with Dante prior to the bout. That being said, the game is far from perfect. Part of that can boil down to the development and the time it was created. Devil May Cry 1, as many know, began life as another Resident Evil title, but was quickly changed due to the gameplay obviously being polar opposite to that of a survival horror game. The very basic item-based puzzles, claustrophobic and twisted environments give off the vibes of an early survival horror concept, but it's hard to have that tense survival aspect with unlimited ammo, giant swords, and the ability to turn it into a literal demon. Though, thinking about it, it would have been kind of interesting to see how this would have been as a full Resident Evil game, but that really could be a whole other video. Back to the game at hand. By today's standards, the gameplay does feel a little stiff, and the playtime leaves something to be desired, really only taking 3 to 5 hours to complete. However, this one is number 3 on my ranking list due to the dark gothic setting, amazing vibe, and kicking off this great series. It is the prototype that walked to allow future titles to truly run. The penultimate title is none other than the most recent Devil May Cry 5. Like 4, I don't love Dante losing the spotlight, but I cannot deny how good this game is. Instead of 2, we have 3 extremely different characters to play as. Nero is back with various Devil Breaker arms, which really gives him a lot more diversity in his moveset that was missing from his debut title. V is a summoner type, who has various familiars to attack on his behalf, which includes a lot of series nods to Devil May Cry 1, including Griffin, Shadow, and Nightmare. They do the dirty work, while V swoops in to finish the job. Then we have the return of Dante, who brings an assortment of new weapons and his tried and true styles, along with a brand new Devil Trigger transformation. Though I don't love playing as V, and Nero still isn't as much fun as Dante, for me all the characters are well thought out and play completely differently. The story, though enjoyable, feels like it retcons quite a bit of the previous story work, and pretty much cements Nero as the Devil May Cry protagonist going forward. At least we don't have too much retreading as we did in 4, allowing for a more interesting playthrough. There is some back and forth between the timeline, but it works quite well in the context of the story. Each mission tells us the time and date to provide some context for the overarching story and its placement, which does help provide some great story moments. Though there is not nearly as much retread, I would have liked a little bit more diversity in the levels. There is a good swath of underworld motif levels that take place in the Quailoth routes, which unfortunately was a tad dull, especially seeing how good the game looks in some of the earlier stages. However, the heavy music tracks like Devil Trigger, Subhuman, and Crimson Cloud really help push you forward, along with the over-the-top set pieces that are so well known in the Devil May Cry universe. This is an absolute must-play and is number 2 on my list.
Or better yet, how about a kiss from this? So, this is what they call a heartwarming family reunion, eh? You got that right.
And number 1 is Devil May Cry 3: Dante's Awakening. When I sat down to write this list, I always knew that this was going to be number 1, and replaying it recently only further enforced my feeling. Playing this one feels like the clear evolution and perfection of the formula that was established in Devil May Cry 1. Here we play as a young Dante, who's still coming to terms with his demon self, all while battling his brother Virgil and his partner in crime Arkham, who wished to reopen the underworld that Sparta had sealed centuries ago. And who could forget getting shot at by Lady, who has a great character art in this game and becomes a series mainstay and the resident non-demon badass in the games and shows that followed. Now, there is some introspection on Dante's part, allowing for some moments of reflection and growth as he wrestles with his half-human, half-demon heritage. Though there is not too much melodrama as Dante returns to his cocky and over-the-top badass cheesiness that was missing from the second entry. The cinematics truly embrace wild combat and stunts. I mean, the intro scene has him beating down demons while eating pizza. The scene also includes surfing on a demon's back and using pool balls to KO a number of poor souls. This embracement of action is also reflected in the gameplay itself. Dante has access to multiple weapons, as well as 6 distinct styles to choose from. The weapons are creative, from swords, nunchucks, and a literal electric guitar. But the introduction of the style system was a real game changer. Did you want to dodge like a trickster, or go on the offensive as a swordmaster? The choice was yours. The game primarily takes place in the Tower of Temenegru, which felt quite varied with numerous areas, with only shades of backtracking. However, the tower does transform throughout the game, making it feel less monotonous. Considering that the game was released in 2005, it still controls buttery smooth, and is just oh so fun to play. The only minor nitpick is being locked into one style, 2 devil arms, and 2 guns at any given time. It's a little constricting, but I guess it goes along with the motif of Dante is powerful, but he's still coming into his own to become the OP Devil Slayer we know in future titles. However, with the best story, leap forward in gameplay, and overall feel, Devil May Cry 3 stands tall as the best game in this series. So there you have it, a full ranking of the original 5 mainline Devil May Cry games. Now, I have recently been playing a lot of longer RPGs, so it was kind of refreshing and a nice change of pace to be able to play some awesome games that were on the shorter side. It also, got me to remember all the fun times I've had with Devil May Cry. The over-the-top action, embracing the cheese, and also reminding myself how much I love Dante as a character. Replaying them all, talking about them today, it really did perfect the 3D brawler, and with each entry, maybe outside of 2, it really further evolved and refined it to near perfection. It is so good that, I hope that one day we might get Devil May Cry 6, but, won't hold my breath. But anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.